to do some what does it prints. Have a look at this. When you're confident you know what it prints, keep going. This prints roll roll because it says roll is assigned after drive in the constructor chain. So let's have a look and see what's happening. We are going to create a new car object, which means we're going to invoke the cars constructor. Now, the one line in the cars constructor is noise equals roll, but remember that because there isn't an explicit invocation of the superclass vehicles constructor, we're going to get one implicitly here, and it's going to be the very first thing that cars constructor does. So before we get to that noise equals roll line, we're going to have invoked the vehicle constructor, which sets noise to be drive, okay? But then having executed that, we come back and we set noise to be roll. Okay? So noise will be set to be roll, and then when we send the drive message to the car object, the inherited method drive will be used from vehicle, which will print that twice. What about this one? Pause and think. This is going to print drive because we have a default no argument constructor for car by default, since car doesn't define itself a constructor, and that will automatically call the no argument constructor from vehicle. And the drive method is inherited just as before. What about this one? Pause and think. This one doesn't compile. Why doesn't it compile? Because noise is private, and therefore it can't be used inside car, which attempts to print it out. Oops, protected would have worked. What about this one, which does have a protected? Pause and think. This one doesn't compile for a different reason. Why doesn't this one compile? This one doesn't compile because vehicle has only a one argument constructor, and so when the Java system attempts to invoke a zero argument constructor in order to construct a car object, it doesn't work because there isn't one. Constructors are not inherited is one way to think about it. What about this one? This works because this time the car constructor explicitly invokes the superclass constructor with the argument that it was passed, and everything works as you would like. So in summary, when you inherit from a superclass, the subclass, the thing doing the inheriting, gets all the public and protected members, that is the instance variables and the methods of the superclass. The syntax for that is like this: public class UG student extends student. The subclass can add further members, and it can also override methods. And so that's why we have this terminology. It extends or it adds to the behaviour of its superclass. And you can think about inheritance as corresponding to taxonomic relations for everyday concepts. That's the ISA idea. In Java, you can only inherit from one superclass. It is, however, easy to get modelled with inheritance hierarchies, and you have a very tight coupling between a subclass and its superclass, which is to say, the subclass is strongly dependent on the superclass. For example, if there's a change in the superclass, it can very easily break the subclass. And so you should only use inheritance when there's a strong reason to do so. And usually the strong reason to do so is that there is a definite ISA relationship in the domain. That it is sensible to model in this way. And that's the reading. All of these three lectures here, I think we're giving reading out of objects first. There is a corresponding chapter, of course, in the Java tutorial. I think it's chapter 5, but things are introduced in a slightly different order. So you might well like to read that as well, or if that's the book you prefer, you might like to read that. But be aware that the material will be introduced in a slightly different order.